Welcome to this video on claims-based baseline. In the previous video, we had looked, if you have not seen that video, please do check out this video, Clinical Data Analytics and RWE Interviews, Baseline Period. So that's the concept we covered in that video, and this is the implementation part of the same. So that is the conceptual part, and this is how we implement with our programming language. So it's very important that you go and check that video in order to understand this concept of baseline 180 days. So now we will see how we are going to implement that in our language. So first thing is installing the packages. So we can see that we have installed packages Tidyverse and Radar. These are the two packages that's been installed. Tidyverse contains dplyr, which is used for data manipulation, and Radar is used for reading the CSV file. The data here is available in CSV format, and that's why we are using Radar to read the CSV file. Here is the folder location. So I will just uncomment it and I will give the folder path. This is assignment operator. This is simple that for defining the assignment. Basically, if you are already familiar with SAS, then it's like the person-led statement, the closest we can relate to person-led statement, and you are assigning the path here. This is how we do in R. Next is reading the file. So let's give a name to the raw underscore enroll is the name of the new data set. And we are reading read underscore CSV. It's a CSV file from the Radar library. And one more thing I want to explain is whenever we install a package, if it's an RStudio, it is once you install it will be there. But we have to keep calling it library, using the library if you are using that package. This is like installing an application in your Google Play Store, and this is like clicking on that particular application each time you want to open. So each time, even if it is there installed, still we have to click it in order to, and it's like the library statement that you see here. So read underscore CSV, paste 0, and the folder path, and then you're giving the file name, member underscore enrollment underscore baseline dot CSV. Now, this is a string. This part is within quotation, and this also should be within a string. So we are concatenating two string. This is the concatenation part. It's like catex, if you know SAS. And we are able to generate that folder and can write head of, if I want to see a couple of rows. Let's say I want to read 5 rows, then I will give 5. So it's reading the 5 rows, first top 5 rows. Now let's do a bit of exploration of the data. And I want to say, let's say, give a print also. It's extra in case it print each time. And let's say I want to, this option, you don't have to really give it, it's optional. So let's say I want to see the structure of the data. What are the columns and the data types? So I will give raw underscore dataset name, raw underscore and str. It's like proc contents if you know SAS. So you get patient ID, the data type. Some of the values also you can see here. Say this is eligibility effective, it's in date format, eligibility end in date format, this is character format. We get some details about the data. And now I want to know what are the possible values in, let's say, in race. What are the possible values in race? So raw underscore enroll dollar race. Now race, if you see, if I type RACE, it's not showing, it's not giving the results actually. Why it's not happening? Because race is uppercase. So it has to be uppercase. If you're giving smaller, lowercase, it will not work. Like in SAS, lowercase also works, but in R, variable name cannot be changed. The case cannot be changed. You have to use the same case consistently. So here you can see whatever is in the data, we have to use that. So if the data in the data race is uppercase, we have to use uppercase only. Now you can see these are the possible values we are getting for race. It's like the prop freak in SAS. On the other hand, if you want to, let's say, want to check one more variable, let's say I also want to know what is the possible values in product. So I'll just change from replace race with product and check it. So I'm seeing you here it's EPO, HMO, RX. Any idea what is HMO, PPO, RX? So HMO is, it's in the context of insurance, we are looking at enrollment. And it's insurance type. HMO is a health management organization. Here the patients can only go within the network of healthcare professionals. They cannot go outside the network. Second thing is, even if within the network also, they are meeting a physician, general practitioner, and they cannot directly go to they're not satisfied with the consultation, they cannot directly go to a specialist. And if they go, they will not be reimbursed. They need a referral from the general practitioner, then only they can consult the specialist. On the other hand, we have PPO, preferred provider organization. Here actually you can go outside the network of healthcare professionals. In every policy will have a network. So you can go beyond the network of them. Let's say you went to your network only provides, let's say one hospital, that is, let's assume Apollo Hospital, and you cannot go outside that. But for example, a physician who is much better in Manipal Hospital, you cannot go if it is not within the network of that policy. But PPO provides you that option. You can go outside the network also. This policy is expensive. HMO is economic, more affordable. And the second thing is PPO, you don't need a referral to meet a specialist, even within the network of healthcare professionals. So let's say I have a severe headache, I went to a GP, and I'm not very happy. So without a referral, I can directly go to a specialist, let's say ENT specialist or a neuro physician, and then I don't have to worry about not being reimbursed. So the next one is EPO, exclusive provider organization. So this is slightly somewhere in the middle of HMO and PPO. HMO is good. Let's say it's the other end. PPO is a better one. Now EPO falls somewhere in between HMO and PPO. It is where you can go without a referral to a specialist within the network of healthcare professionals. But at the same time, you cannot go beyond the network. You cannot go outside the network. In other words, if your network is Apollo Hospital, you can directly go to a ENT specialist without a referral from a GP. But you cannot go outside that hospital, like Manipal Hospital. It will not be reimbursed. So that is how it is different. HMO, PPO, and EPO. RX is for prescription claims only, not for physician visit, but for prescriptions. That is, insurance applies only to prescriptions, pharmacy. So this is all about the different types of product that we see product column. Now we are talking about what the whole purpose here is to see if you have seen the other video, then you will know that we are trying to make sure there is we are catching only those patients who have no gap in enrollment. In other words, their enrollment is continuous during the baseline period. If there is any enrollment, we'll not be considering those patients. How do we check that enrollment? So the first thing is we will be getting the previous end date. Now, why I'm looking at the previous end date, I will just give a bit of explanation here, then we'll go into the coding part. So let me copy paste here and explain things. So I will delete all this so that I will keep only what is simple to understand. So let's create a variable called previous end date. What this will contain is it will take the previous value for every row. Is there a and which column we are taking? This column and getting the previous value. We will come to why we are doing that. So let's say the previous value for this row is nothing. There is no previous value for this patient. So it is NA. And for this row, what's the previous value? This one. So we'll copy this. It's like taking the lag. Basically, you're taking the lag. Lag we use even SAS as well. So this is the lag function helps us to get this. Now, why we are doing this? Because our intention is to see this is the policy start date and this is the policy end date. So but this is the policy end date and the next start date is for this same patient is this. Is there a gap between previous end date of the policy and the start of the next policy? If there is a gap, then we will flag those patients as one and will not be including them in the study. So that is the whole purpose. Now, given that this particular value, we have been able to bring it down using lag function here, now we'll directly take this value and subtract this one and we'll see if there is a gap or not. 1 day gap makes sense because the insurance ends and the next day it starts. So it's not a gap. Basically 1 day, it's not a gap. It's just next day it started. So there is no gap in insurance. Just that the start date is next day after the end date of the previous day. So this is the concept and we are trying to take the lag function, apply the lag function here. So coming to this previous end is a new column I'm creating. Okay, so that is a plan here. So how do we create that? So let's take a ENR enrollment. Yeah, enrollment previous. Let's take this data set and creating a data set. And what I'm using input data set is raw enroll. So this is the input data set and this output data set. And we are using pipe operator. We are always using in dplyr, we use pipe operator. This means take this data set and pass it on to the next step. And what's the next step? You're creating a new variable. Whenever we create a new variable, you use mutate function. And what are we going to do? Create a new variable. What's that? Prev end. Same thing here. So prev end equal to it is a previous value. So you are applying the lag function. And on which variable you are using? The end date of insurance. And what's that? LH end. Remember, we have to use the uppercase here because that's how it is in the data. R is case sensitive. Now I've created the previous end date. Okay, next. After taking the previous end date, next step is I can print it actually. Basically, we can print it and show you. End of inner underscore prev. And how many rows? I will show 5 rows. See, it has created a new column called previous end date. But there is a mistake here. See, actually, if you see there is this patient is only one record. So you should not have any previous value. You cannot have a previous value because he has only one record. There is no previous record for him. On the other hand, these two patients, this patient can have NA, and this is correct. But here, if you see, it should be NA here because it's the first record of this patient. Every first record should be non-missing. Should be, sorry, NA. In other words, it's missing. When you apply first dot subject ID, the first record is always missing. If first dot subject ID, then null. Else, if you give a value, so it has to be missing. So there is a mistake I'm doing here, and let's correct that. So I should actually arrange it in like proc sort you use. I will sort it by draw underscore enroll, arrange by which column? Pat ID, comma, eligibility start date. In other words, insurance start date, eligibility effective date. And then if you remember, if you already worked on SAS, you remember that after sorting, then you apply for by subject ID. And then only you apply for the first dot subject ID. So here is as well, it's the same concept. First you arrange, sort it, then you give by that particular patient ID or subject ID. Here it's patient ID. By pat ID. So what you're writing instead of by, you should write group by. And what's the column name? Pat ID. In SAS, it's a little easy to type the syntax because their variables are, or even the statements are not case sensitive. But if I have even this function also, if I put uppercase, it will not work. If I just put uppercase, it will not be able to identify that. So here everything is case sensitive. In SAS, we don't have that issue. Column names are not case sensitive. Even syntax also can type uppercase or lowercase, but it's not so here. So group by patient ID, and then I'm creating the next step, pass it on to the next step, and then you are creating the new column. Let's now run it and see if the previous end date is created. Yes, and it's NA for this record. Makes sense. And let's print a couple of more records. So yeah, now it's correct. It's NA for the first record. Second record has previous value, correct. Here as well, this for this patient. First record is NA, then it makes sense. Next is having the previous value, this is correct. And rest of the patients are all NA because they have only one record. There is no previous record for them. So this is correct now. Next step, now we got the previous end date. What's the next thing is we saw the concept here. After that, we have to subtract. Now we got this value. Next, we subtract this minus this. So eligibility effective date minus previous end date. We'll see how is that, if it is, there's a gap or not, basically. Now, let's create a new data set, and the data set name can be ENR. No, it cannot be ENR underscore cap. And the input data set is ENR underscore previous. The previous end date it contains. Now, again, pipe operator means pass it on to the next step. I'm creating a new variable called gap here. Always, when we create a new variable, remember apply mutate function in dplyr. In mutate, the next step is the variable we are creating is gap. And what it is, if the gap, if eligibility effective date minus, instead of subtraction, we can say actually if else. In SAS, we read if condition and then else condition. Here it's if else, we are giving at a time. If else, eligibility, if non-missing, first thing is your eligible, the previous end date should not be NA. We saw many of the records have NA because they have one record. But it's NA, you really cannot subtract. Doesn't make sense. So should be non-missing. What you write in SAS, if it's non-missing of previous end date. Here how it is, if non-missing of is.na, we write. In SAS we write, tilde sign, non-missing or not equal to 2 space. Here it's a little different here. Not is.na of, what's the name of the column? If end date. And operator here. Eligibility effective date is greater than previous end date plus 1. Or you can understand in other. This means this, it's okay to have 1 day difference. Why? Because the insurance ends yesterday and today the new insurance starts. So 1 day difference is okay, but it's not a gap. You should not call it as a gap. Because it's starting today, ending yesterday. There is no gap in the insurance policy coverage of the patient. Yesterday also he was covered, today also he is covered. But when you are doing mathematically, there is 1 day difference is there between yesterday and today. So that 1 day is okay. That's why I'm giving +1 is okay. But if it is more than +1 gap between previous end date and +1, more than +1 gap, then the start date is more than that, then of course there's a gap. That is the case, then give comma. I will give 1 if the condition is true, else 0. So now let's print it. Head of a head cannot be uppercase. I made a mistake here. So head should be lowercase only. ANR underscore gap of, let's put it. So here you can see for all these patients, if you see, it is all 0. Gap is not there because this patient 31st October, 31st December ended. Next day it started 2022 January. So there was no gap. Same is the case of other patients. But here, if you see, for this patient, it's 31st of December 2021. His previous insurance closed, and the next day it started. It didn't start the next day, I'm sorry. It started after 1 month and 9 days. And the month of February only it started, February 10. December 31 ended, February 10 it started. So 1 month, 9 days, he was not insured there. We have discussed about the reasons why there may be gap in insurance, or why you can see why this one patient is HMO and the next record for the same patient is PPO. Why these things happen, it has been discussed in the previous video. So those are the conceptual aspects. Here we are looking at implementation. So we have seen how we are able to. Now this is how we know that only one patient here has a gap. So this is the concept and implementation. I think we also, yeah. And in case, let's say, we want to, currently it's not 1 record per patient. There are multiple records per patient. Now, if you want to make it 1 record per patient, we can do it. Now, let's say subject-wise gap or patient, I'll say, gap, patient-wise gap. And the dataset name is ENR underscore gap. That's the input dataset. And pass it on to the next step. What I want to do is basically make it 1 record per patient. And how do I do it? Summarize is a function for that. And take the data set in underscore gap and compute gap by subject wise, patient wise. And that is max of gap. Gap was I think the name of the data column is gap here. Yeah. So we are looking max of gaps this column. So if the patient has 0 and 0, then it's 0, max is 0. But if the patient has 1 and 0, then we'll take 1. In this case, it's 1. So this is how we are computing the maximum. And let's take the head pattern score. Yeah. And you can see it's one record per subject. There is no repetition of records. So this is how we will do in real time. One thing I think I missed showing you is something. How do we check the number of unique values in it? What are the unique values? For example, you want to know in a data set. For example, I'll just add that. We'll do it here itself. This is not part of this, but just additional things I just want to mention. So if I want to know what are the unique values of product, so what I will do is dataset name is raw underscore enroll, and the column name is separated by dollar sign. Once the column name, let's say state, what all states we have in the data. We can just check it out. See, Arizona, California, Florida, and so on. On the other hand, if you want to see for product, I just copy paste from here. So you can see EPO, HMO, PPO, RX. So each column, it's like a prop freak in SAS. If you know that SAS, it's the same as prop freak. Just that the syntax is slightly little smaller here, little less here, but not quite different. So this is about enrollment. Checking the enrollment gap, it is very important. And this kind of logic is widely applied in real world evidence studies for cohort building and eligibility filtering. If you are learning RWE or preparing for clinical data science roles, this is exactly the type of workflow interviewers expect us to know. Thank you. If you like the video, please subscribe and like it.